Hi everyone, XVED here. I just finished recording the video for my emotional and personality developmental history, and it's pretty dark. I mean, there's going to be a lot of videos that are like that, so every once in a while I'm going to need to take a break and talk about things that are lighter, more enjoyable, to try to balance these videos because I am going to be reaching into the darkest recesses of my mind at times, and it's important to have balance because if you don't, then life will weigh you down. And on that note, there is something I forgot to include regarding my developmental history, my personality, um, and that's related to my Japanese ancestry. I know I don't look like it. I look like a white guy, but I am actually a quarter Japanese. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the video. So, my interests are broad and varied. I pick up different things from time to time. So I'll primarily try to focus on the ones that have been most consistent in my life. I'm I'm getting into middle age, so you try and explore and try different things. And so let's go in chronological order, just because that makes things a little bit easier to put stuff in context. Um, as far as the most consistent interests are concerned. So first and foremost, guns. I know, big surprise, white guy in America and interested in guns. But for context, if you've watched the video on my emotional and personality developmental history, you know that there was a lot of abuse involved. There were circumstances I'm not going to get into where I very frequently had to go to gun ranges as a kid growing up, though, into my teenage years, or going shooting with various members of my family. Um, I'm not going to get into those specific contexts as to why that was, but I spent a lot of time at the range growing up. And those are some of the most positive memories I have as a kid, because my primary abusers, they had to behave themselves when we went to the range. They were in front of other people, and I got to do cool and destructive stuff. Um, I could barely hold my arms up when I was shooting a Sig 226. I was, I don't know, maybe 7. But it's really hard for kids to relate to that one kid in class who, as an 8-year-old, got to shoot an MP5 on burst. We had a There was a guy who um, I'm trying not to reveal too many details, but he legally had an MP5 due to his duties and the things that he did, and it was a class 3 weapon, so it had fully automatic capabilities. But yeah, as an 8-year-old kid, he was like, "Hey, you want to try shooting this?" And sure enough, got to shoot an MP5 with on burst mode as an 8-year-old, and it was a lot of fun. It was cool. So as an adult, as I progressed into adulthood, I just love guns. I love the technical aspects of them. They've always been a positive thing for me. Even despite all of the discussion about more negative topics, I'm not gonna go into them on this video, but um, they've always represented a positive thing to me in my life. So I, as an adult, started collecting. I have dozens of guns at this point, and I don't have like repeats. Like I'm not that kind of collector that has 20 AR-15s of various manufacturers. No, I have in general different guns, different calibers, different makes, models, so on and so forth. And I enjoy not only collecting them, but going and shooting them and learning, various differences in them. Like, oh, what's a good example? So Glocks. I started, my first handgun was a Glock, 23C. I made a huge mistake. Don't buy, don't buy a C variant. Do not buy a compensated gun as your first gun, because you will go deaf if you ever have to use it as a personal defense weapon. That's the last thing you want. I had people who I let shoot my gun, and they're like, "Oh, it'll be fine." I had this one guy I knew. He's like, "Oh, it'll be fine. I've been shooting guns my whole life. Not an issue. Let me have it." He went out and started shooting it. And he's like, "Fuck, fuck, fuck," and tried to cover up his ears because of how loud it was. He's like, "God damn it, my ears are ringing now. I'm losing more hearing." I was like, "I warned you." But but anyway, shooting a Glock is completely different than shooting, for example, a full metal frame gun. So like I've got a 1911, for example, which is a 45 caliber handgun. It's been around for more than 100 years. The design was from John Browning. Amazing gun. With the full metal frame though, versus the Glock, which has a metal upper portion, like that's all steel, but then the lower is mostly plastic. Um, there's a lot less recoil for the gun that has all metal frame versus plastic. And so they shoot completely different. And then even amongst like those differences, or even amongst full metal frames, there are huge differences. So like my 1911 shoots completely different from my Beretta. What do I have? Beretta 90 something. It's the 40 cal variant. I can't remember the number. And that gun is like a super high skill weapon. You have to know exactly how it handles in order to shoot it correctly. You have to have correct trigger placement. You have to have correct reset, correct holding, focus, aim point, everything. It's a very high skill gun. Honestly, how the U.S. military made that their primary weapon, other than reliability, I have no idea, because that was a terrible decision in my opinion. And then versus like, differences between my Glock and I own a Walther PPQ. The Walther, if you are a collector, I'm going to caution you on buying this for one specific purpose, but if you are a collector and you love shooting, Walther PPQ is a great investment. It comes with a trigger, German engineering, comes with a trigger that is pretty much a competition trigger, but that's part of their stock build. It's an amazing trigger. So amazing, and here's the caution, that I had never shot anything like it before I owned this gun. And the first time I took it out to the range, I had like 3 misfires where when I went to, out of pattern, reset the trigger, I accidentally set off the gun again because of how little of travel there is between the reset point and the fire. Like it's a very, very fine trigger. And I had to relearn how to shoot because of this gun. These are the things that I enjoyed doing. And I do need to address kind of an elephant in the room. There are old videos that you will find in here in my channel that include me shooting a bump ski, a bump stock for my AK-47. First off, it was fun from the perspective of owning one to shoot. There's no harm in saying that. That said, it was immediately clear once I learned how to shoot this thing, these things never should have been legal. Nor should they ever be legal again. I know there's a lot of technicalities, and I'm sure I'm going to get a ton of hate from the NRA. I know there's a lot of technicalities with ATF regulations, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau, I think. I can't remember if they're a bureau or an agency. Anyway, but just from a logical perspective, this enables you to put out a large volume of fire, and that's what matters when you're trying to engage in a firefight or you're trying to kill a lot of people. as we learned with Mandalay Bay. For the love of God, do not make these things legal again. I don't care what the technical rules are. Pass a law. Do not allow these to become legal again. And speaking of laws, that reminds me, Congress, for the love of God, please update your laws and make it so that the registered portion of a firearm is the part that actually shoots the bullet. And as a specific example, under law, the lower receiver, and I'm not going to put photos up because I don't want to get in trouble for possible copyright infringement or anything, but the lower receiver of an AR-15, you can look this up online, that's the part that legally has to be registered with the ATF if it was manufactured by a large manufacturer like Springfield. Just an example. Colt. Colt is the original maker of the AR-15. That's the part that has to have the serial number. That's the part that has to be registered. Not the upper portion that actually shoots the bullet, where the round is detonated and the bullet comes flying out of. That may have had to do something with misunderstandings of how firearms function when Congress formed the law, but please, for the love of God, update it, because if I remember correctly, there was somebody in California who got charged with some ATF violations because they were essentially making lower receivers, and they were able to get off charges because they challenged in court what the definition of a firearm was, and they basically pointed out that the lower receiver has nothing to do with firing the gun. It is what the portion of the gun that actually fires, because he was making lower receivers for AR-15s. The lower receiver just holds the upper receiver in place and holds the magazine and operates the trigger. The part that actually shoots is the upper receiver on the AR-15. And he was able to get all charges dismissed. So for the love of God, Congress, please update the law. Anyway, enough about that. Moving on, Japanese culture and language. Like I said, I am a quarter Japanese. I grew up in a multicultural household. And obviously with, if you watch the other video, you know that I grew up in multiple households. I have a lot of different heritage, but the one that I most expressed and most learned about and consistently has had influence on my life, like for example, the works of Yamamoto Tsunetomo, Hagakure, or In the Shadow of Leaves, I think is the rough translation. Miyamoto Musashi, The Book of Five Rings, and a number of other works. These influenced my childhood into my adulthood, and specifically Hagakure helped me when I was recovering from and forming new beliefs about the world and how I was going to live in the world after the military. Specifically the ways of thinking about committing to actions wholeheartedly, mindfulness, and being in the present moment by accepting that death can come at any second. Those really helped. And for anyone interested in just kind of an introduction to that without reading through these volumes of scattered works, there was a movie that was inspired by Hagakure. And I know I just said it wrong, but I try to say it in ways that people who are not used to speaking Japanese can pronounce it. A typical person who doesn't know how to speak Japanese will say Hagakure. A Japanese person will say Hagakure. There's a specific way to say R sounds, because R does not actually exist in R and L sounds, because R and L are not distinctive in Japanese. They're kind of combined. The movie is called Ghost Dog: Way of the Samurai from 1999. It has Forrest Whitaker in it, playing the role of an assassin, and he um, is an American who became heavily influenced by Hagakure as he began engaging in life as an assassin. It's a great introduction to kind of that philosophy and way of living. Decent movie. I liked it. It's pretty good. Um, but it's a very foreign concept a lot of times to Western thinkers. And the idea that you could just discard your life is not, in order to do something, is not something that most Westerners are going to be familiar with commonly. So there's a lot of learning there. It heavily shaped my perspective, so it was an oversight on my part not to include it in the video on emotional and personality development, but but it was very, very critical. Gaming. So I've been playing games since I was a kid. I mean, I think most people these days play games, or so I typically tend to play first-person shooters a lot as an adult. But I have to give a shout out to one series that has stayed with me, and I have stayed with it through better and through worse. Ace Combat. I forget what the original title was called. It was called something else before they moved it to Ace Combat. But I think it's by Namco or some Japanese company. They've been doing a pretty good job throughout the years. I've been playing it since the 90s. And for anyone interested in the Ace Combat series, or who enjoys the Ace Combat series and is more interested in like an arcade version with a really good story, like a role-playing story, check out the Balkan War. The Balkan War, I think, was, and no offense to the publisher and the developer, I know you guys are experimenting, so I don't mean any offense in any way, but the monumental pinnacle of your development so far, in my personal opinion, has been the Balkan War. That game sent chills down my spine, gave me goosebumps when I played it. And I'm not going to give away what the story is, but basically your actions as a pilot and somebody who's engaged in the Balkan War and an ace influence what you see and how the game plays out. Now, the story is semi-linear, I will say that, but the people, you see how you affect other people's lives with the decisions that you make, and it was amazing. And I need to double check the developer names so I'm not getting anybody wrong, because Project Aces is amazing, and I love that you guys are still carrying it on. Yeah, so Namco, if you are listening, please make more games like the Balkan War. It was amazing. I I am half tempted to go find my PS2 and play it again, because there's nothing like it, and I can't find it on Steam. So if it was on Steam, I'd buy it in a heartbeat and play it. But yeah, Namco, if you're listening, please. Something I've been playing for about 10 years, almost 15 years. Magic the Gathering card game, super nerdy. First exposure to it was back in late 90s, I think. Didn't get into it at that time, but I got into it in the early 2010s, and my collection is pretty substantial. If anybody's watching that likes Magic, feel free to hit me up, leave a comment on your favorite general. I love playing EDH. I'm gonna complain a little bit. I'm gonna get up on my soapbox. For the love of God, Wizards and the companies like Star City and TCG, please stop allowing people to come up with net decks. It destroys creativity and makes the format extremely boring. That is the sole reason that I play EDH now, and pretty much nothing else. I go to pre-releases and EDH. That's it. And I know I'm not the only one out there who hates that. So we play EDH because there's a lot more creativity. There's a lot more individual expression. So yeah, if any fellow Magic the Gathering players are watching, we know what your favorite general is. It's behind me, kind of buried, but I've got about 20 decks that are currently built. They all need updates. I haven't been updating them for about 5 years because of work. I've been too busy. But yeah, let me know. I personally am a Gruul player. One of my favorite decks outside it. I also love Chaos. So my two top favorite decks respectively are Xenagos, the Reveler, and I don't play the cheap make dudes massive early on kind of strategy so I can one punch kill and end the game on like turn 6. No, I don't do that. I drop massive creatures and swing out every single turn. Every single combat is like balls to the wall, throwing huge amounts of damage and effects at you, but giving other people the opportunity to continue playing. And then the other one that I love is Yidris, the Maelstrom. I forget what the rest of his name is, but it's Yidris, the 4-color general. Oh my God, I love the chaos. I love the cascade and everything else. So, philosophy. So philosophy has followed me since very early on, especially my early teen years, in dealing with some difficult situations. Expression of thought through various writing has always been attractive, and that included through poetry, along with other writings. And I also love learning about philosophy. So, and I'll talk about this more later on, but I've read broad spectrum philosophy. I don't limit myself to just one kind of train of thought, like, for example, pacifism or warfare. Hagakure, Book of Five Rings, those are examples from Japanese perspective. Up on my shelf I have copies of things like, let's see, Ender's Game, The Prince, Emotional Intelligence from Daniel Goleman. Sorry, I'm trying to read some of them, but they're kind of buried. Shakespeare, Aristotle, and Plato, the Republic, and God, what were the other ones? I'm trying to remember. It's probably easier to just recount the stuff that I read more recently. So I had to reread The Prince. I had to read Why We Can't Wait from Martin Luther King. I had to read, I'm sorry, I had to take a momentary pause because I've also been doing a lot of legal reading related to my work. I've had to read a lot of other books, and then I'm currently in the process of reading not just philosophy, but things that are related to philosophical perspectives. Like I'm reading The Jungle from Upton Sinclair. And more recently, 1984. And I am planning on reading through Marcus Aurelius's Meditations and some other ones. Approaching it from a lot of different perspectives, Descartes, especially in a democracy, it's important to understand things like social contract theory, um, the values of expression, things like, you know, what Martin Luther King posted, not Martin Luther King Jr., but Martin Luther King, the person who was excommunicated by the church, posted to the wall of, I think it was the Roman Catholic Church, and that's what got him excommunicated. Um, Understanding these differing perspectives to understand how other people might view things, how they might think about things, and how you yourself might think about things is really important to me. I've had a lot of very difficult situations in my life and things that were very difficult to understand and explain, and branching out into different forms of philosophy has helped me greatly in understanding that. And with work, which I will eventually talk about my work history and my professional history. Um, Reading The Prince actually helped me understand quite a bit, a lot more than I had, and I wish I had read it before I moved to DC, frankly. So if you are a federal professional or somebody interested in moving to DC, read The Prince, understand it. Don't just read it. If you understand The Prince, and I'm not encouraging anybody to be underhanded or deceitful, but I am encouraging them to understand the kind of people that they might be dealing with, that they probably will deal with. Read The Prince. Read von Clausewitz on war. It will help you understand what you are going to be dealing with. And then from a poetry perspective, just expressing myself. I've been doing it mostly since high school. I did it a little bit early on, but I don't have those writings anymore. I do have the stuff from high school, though. I haven't really written, though, probably in the last 10 or so years. I've been too busy. And thinking in poetic prose and rhyme and structure takes time. It takes habit. And I stopped having that habit years ago, so I haven't done it, but I might pick it up again in the future. It's stuck with me. And then finally, cybersecurity and kind of technical areas, those have become, and privacy, those have become kind of my main hobbies because they align with my professional roles and responsibilities. I never thought I would be making videos for YouTube. Honestly, I hate Google, Microsoft, Amazon, AT&T, Verizon, all of the companies that are trying to aggregate large data to create profiles about individuals. I have the utmost disdain for those companies, and as much as I hate them, I cannot deny that they provide valuable services, and I understand how those services work. But as an American who has to deal with breaches that happen frequently and for which there are no consequences, such as the Equifax data breach, no real consequences. Let's be realistic. As somebody who has to deal with that, and in a country that leads the way in the digital frontier, but lags behind the EU and doesn't even have basic protections like are present in GDPR, I hate these companies. I really do. So YouTube, Google, and your parent company, Alphabet, thank you for creating YouTube and for its purpose to connect people and entertain and all of that. But at the same time, I hate some of the work that you guys are doing. And if you're watching this, just remember your original creed. Do no evil. And keep to that. Because I know you guys have been having a lot of problems in recent years. So from a privacy perspective, it's hard to track where I'm at. I don't. There are circumstances involved in my life that make it so that it is dangerous for people to know where I live. It's dangerous for me and my family for people to know where I live. So I have gone to great measures to ensure that my data does not wind up out there. And after the Equifax data breach, I actually found out that my home address was very well known, and that was a serious problem. So since that time, I have been a ghost. I'm not going to comment on techniques and all of that because I don't want people to be able to figure it out, especially since there are going to be some people who would be interested in figuring that out and finding me, and they are professionals. So let's not go down that route. And then from the and this kind of aligns with guns, gaming. I love technical stuff, like law. And you wouldn't think law is technical, but law is extremely technical. Magic the Gathering, extremely technical. To play correctly, Magic the Gathering is extremely technical. Cybersecurity and gaming, there's some crossover. To be clear, I'm not breaking the law, nor am I intentionally violating the terms of service of any of the games that I play. But for single player games that I own, that I'm playing by myself and not harming anybody else or interacting with them online, I develop mods and hack my own games, and it's fun. I can, like some of the first stuff I learned how to do was, I love the Total War series, for example. I've been playing since Shogun, Grand Strategy, and I should have said that that's actually one of the other primary ones I play. Been playing since the original Shogun, and I loved Shogun 2 and Rome and a bunch of others. I like the historical stuff. Not so much Warhammer fan. I don't get into the lore. I don't have time. But for those games, I started making mods. And some of the earliest stuff I learned was how to modify save files to increase my treasury to like 300 million, so that I didn't have to worry about money. Modifying my units so they were, top level. And then as I developed more, I learned how to make mods, and now I'll try to upload some videos if I remember. But I wrote I created a mod, a pack file for Shogun 2 that made it so that the game, and I did it very carefully. I didn't want to create new units. I took the Chosokabe archers and made it so that when they fired, instead of arrows coming out, cannonballs from the Fall of the Samurai era came out. And if you've never seen what 120 to 160 cannonballs does to an army at one time, I would recommend checking it out. I'll try to upload some videos, and then I even played with it some more, like got really technical into it and understood the dependencies within the pack files to the point where I was actually able to create what is in effect tactical nukes. I made it so that I had like a little archer unit. I think I did this for Oda. A little archer unit, and there was like maybe 5 or 10 guys in this unit, and they would fire, and the cannonball would go off, but the cannonball's effects, the dependencies for it, had been modified in terms of the speed at which the explosions spread and the radius and other things to essentially replicate what would happen if a tactical nuke went off. So that these little, this little unit of 5 or 10 guys could take out a full stack army with just one volley. And I'll try to upload those videos, but it was so rewarding from the perspective of like hacking and cybersecurity and gaming, that it made me really want to learn stuff. So like I'm trying to learn assembly language, so I can become a better hacker and a better game hacker for my own stuff. And then a better cybersecurity specialist and begin doing things like reverse engineering and understanding malware. Um, the Marines, just as a little side note related to that crossover, the Marine Corps actually encourages. It's one of their positives, so I'll give them credit. Nothing. I'm not going to start a fight with the Marine Corps. I was Air Force, but we're all vets. Let's keep that in mind. The Marine Corps teaches one really positive thing, which is to have hobbies that align with your official duties, what you do professionally. And by doing so, you bring in skills and reinforce your knowledge and abilities that enriches both your hobby and your professional life. So to that extent, that's part of why I got into game hacking as well. And I'm still continuing down that path as time allows. But all right, well, I've reached the 30+ minute mark, so I'm going to end it here. But yeah, this concludes the video on my interests, a little bit more lighthearted discussion and more positive. But if you have any questions or want any clarifications or any suggestions, feel free to hit me up in the comments section. I'll do my best to keep up. I don't know if YouTube has a direct chat function. I don't think so, but I'll try to keep pace. Anyway, till next time, BacksFed out.